Welcome to an introduction to educational research. This video will introduce you to things to consider when reading a research article. First, take a look down here at the bottom of the screen. You should do a quick skim of the article. Take a look at the title, the abstract, and the headings. Now, the title should give you a good indication of what the research is about. And it should also probably will indicate the relevant variables that are used in the research. If it's a quantitative methodology, there'll be probably dependent and independent variables. If it's qualitative, there may not be specific variables that are mentioned. Next, you want to look at the abstract, which is a brief paragraph right below the title, and it will give you an overview of the area of inquiry or area of study. Usually mention the participants being studied, talk about any relevant variables, and it will briefly outline the findings, the most salient findings. And then usually a research article will have a bunch of subheadings, and these include an introduction, a literature review section, a methodology section, or results or references. And then depending on the type of research it is, there may be other headings that will appear. And we're going to take a look at each of these as we go to this next screen. So after you do that quick look at the title and the abstract and the headings that appear in the research article, then you want to do sort of a deep read of the article. And some questions you want to consider are, what's the research study about? What were the major topic or the focus? What methodology was used? Was it qualitative or quantitative? And these may or may not have any meaning to you right now, but shortly we will be covering those, so they will, and you'll understand what the difference between qualitative and quantitative research methodologies are. Another question is, what were the findings or the results, and what conclusions did the researchers reach? And again, these are the typical sections that will appear: an introduction, lit review, methods, results, discussion, limitations, and references. And we're going to talk about each of these down here. So let's start with the introduction. Now, the introduction, you'll have the title, and then underneath that, usually there'll be an abstract. And then the research article will start, and it usually does not start with the heading introduction, but the first several paragraphs of the research article should be the introduction. And it will identify the problem and provide the necessary background information starting out from a bigger picture and narrowing it down using sort of a logic chain, narrow it down to the specific research questions or areas of inquiry. The introduction should state the purpose of the research. It should state the research question or hypothesis if it is a scientific study and it is appropriate to have a hypothesis. And it should identify any important terms. So these are the major areas that you'd be looking for in the introduction section of a piece of research. The next would be a review of the literature, and that usually follows the introduction, although it may not be a subheading called review of the literature. The introduction, the purpose of the introduction is to establish the need and background and rationale. The literature review then is a summary of research that's already been done in this area. And it places the topic in a theoretical and historical context. In other words, it gives sort of the theoretical background of where this question comes from. So if someone were doing a research study, taking a look at positive reinforcement on in-seat behavior, let's say, well, positive reinforcement comes from applied behavior analysis. So that would be considered the theoretical context of what this research comes from. And usually the lit review will identify that for you. What is the theoretical background that this question comes out of? Then it will talk about the trends or changes that have occurred over time in concerning this topic. So reinforcement strategies started out with B.F. Skinner back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and then it has progressed through what was called behaviorism and now has moved up and is now referred to as applied behavior analysis. And the review of the lit is not a study-by-study summary of each research article. Like, let's say the researcher reviewed 10 articles for the review of the lit. It's not Article 1 said so and so and so, and Article 2 said so and so and so, and Article 3, and so on like that. No, the person writing the review of the lit, it is their analysis and their synthesis of the material, their conclusions that they draw from what they have read in the different research articles. And it should be presented as a well-organized and cohesive expository essay. So that's what you should be looking for in the area of the research article that is devoted to reviewing the literature. Now, the methodology section outlines the specific research methods. It usually describes the participants and any appropriate demographic details about them. It usually will mention something about the research setting where it has taken place. It'll indicate a research design, if appropriate. Was it qualitative? Was it quantitative in nature? And again, we will discuss the distinctions between those. It'll talk about the data collection procedures. How did the researchers collect their data? It'll describe the data collection instruments, any instruments that were used, and specifically in terms of reliability and validity of those instruments. Again, these terms may not have much meaning for you right now, but they will shortly. We'll be covering them. So this is part of the vocabulary of research that you'll be exposed to. And the methodology section should be written. So the methodology section should be written like a cookbook and can follow the recipe. So you know what exactly the ingredients that are being used and what steps to take. So that's the methodology section. The results section, the findings are presented, and they may use charts, tables, diagrams. If it's a quantitative study, if it's a scientific study, then the data will be reported in some kind of numbers and descriptive statistics or inferential statistics. If it's qualitative, if the study is a qualitative methodology, then a huge amount of narrative data was collected for the study. So the results will be reported in narrative form, not in statistical analysis or anything like that. And the results should be presented in a context that they lead back to the research question. The conclusion section may not be labeled as conclusions. It may be called discussion or implications. It's the summary of the results. And here the researchers then sort of interpret the data. They interpret the data that they have analyzed, and so then they talk about conclusions that they draw. It should lead back to the literature review. They'll talk about practical and theoretical implications, probably recommendations for further study. And you want to be careful, not that you want to be careful, but you want to look at make sure the researchers do not go beyond their data. In other words, don't make claims that go far beyond what their actual results and data indicate. So that's the conclusions or recommendations section. Then there'll be a section on limitations, and generally the researchers will discuss threats to internal and threats to external validity. And again, these may be terms that at this point you may not understand or know the meaning of, but you will. It becomes part of the vocabulary that we'll be exposed to. That's the limitations section. And finally, the reference section. And this is a very important section because it allows other researchers to verify the sources that were used. And if they wanted to replicate the study, they can then take a look at what the researchers used to draw their logic chain and to make their points. And it's in the APA format, the American Psychological Association Publication Manual. And I think it's the 6th edition that's in use now. And you'll be, when you're writing your chapter 1, your reference section will also be in the APA format. Well, okay, those are the particular parts of the research article that you should be looking at. Okay. So now this is just a tip for you on reading research articles, especially when it becomes time for you to start to put together your expository essay and build your logic chain. So let's read this together. You will be reading a good deal of research literature on your topic and area of inquiry. You are also aware that Chapter 1 of your thesis or field project contains many subheadings. Example, you'll have an introduction, a background in need, a methodology, etc., which you will need to respond to. Also, you will be attempting to establish a logic chain that funnels down from a big picture perspective to your specific topic or area of inquiry, while citing the relative research literature to support each step in your chain. So you'll have a bunch of articles that you're going to be reading. Now, this can lead to a situation where you wind up with 10 or 15 research articles that you're reading and taking notes on, and things can get quite confusing. One tip I found very helpful is as you're reading an article and you come across something you think might be relevant in your introduction to your Chapter 1 section, you underline it in, let's say, in red. So you're reading this research article and say, wow, this I might use this in my introduction, so I underline this in red. And then you're reading another research article and you say, oh, and this might fit in my introduction, so you underline that in red also. As you continue to read the same article, you come across some information that you think would fit nicely in your rationale and needs section. So you underline that, let's say, in blue marker. And then you continue to read and you come across something you feel would go good in your background section. And let's say you underline that in yellow. So the point here is it comes a time to write your Chapter 1 introduction. You go back through the articles and you find, so you're going to write the introduction. So you find, oh, I underline introduction stuff in red. So you go through each article and you find what's underlined in red. It then becomes very easy, or much easier then, to spot and keep the things in order. So I found this as a very easy way to organize materials when I was writing my dissertation. So I thought I'd share it with you. And I have one other point I'd like to share with you. When I did my doctoral dissertation, I task analyzed everything that had to be done. So this is a task analysis of Chapter 1 of your master's thesis. Now, this is a task analysis that I just wrote. Yours might be a little bit different. And so when I did my doctoral dissertation, I had on a wall in the apartment where I was living, I had all of this task analysis down one side, and I had dates all the way across until I projected I was going to complete my dissertation. Now this is just a sample here. And then I had sticky notes. And so I'd put sticky notes, let's say here, here, and here, and then here, here, and here. And I'd plan out how I was going, how long it would take me, let's say, to begin to develop ideas about my area of inquiry. Okay, so let's say I'm going to take a week. It's going to take me a week to do that. And then start to gather empirical peer-reviewed research on this. Well, I can do this while I'm beginning to think too, so I'll have some more days here. So the idea is I develop a work plan over time that can help keep me on task. So I just thought I would share that with you also. A final note. As you read, evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the research. Think in terms of the overall impact on existing knowledge and educational practice. And keep in mind that good research consists of sound research methodology, very good methodology, and clear, concise reporting. So you can have a little model like this. Here we have good, this is research methodology across the top. This is good research methodology. This is yucky research methodology. This is research reporting. This is good research reporting. This is yucky research reporting. Well, this box right here represents good methodology, good reporting. So this is a good piece of research. You'd like to use this. If it pertains to your topic, you'd like to use it. Now here we have yucky research methodology, but it's written in such a way that it sounds good. Well, this is a bad deal. You need to be really careful about this. If the methodology is weak, even though it sounds good, you want to stay away from this. Here, this box represents good methodology, but yucky reporting. Well, here, this is a maybe, because if the research methodology is sound and the reporting is a little bit shaky, it still may be of use for you. And this box represents yucky research methodology and yucky reporting. And so you just want to put that in the trash. You don't even want to look at that. So keep this in mind when you're looking to find articles that you're going to use for your research. Okay. Now, I probably have emailed you assignment number 2, but just in case I haven't, this is the first part of assignment number 2. So now that you've completed this video, read the research article, Prompting Bar Patrons with Signs to Take Free Condoms. I should have already emailed you this article, and if I haven't, then please email me as quickly as possible and let me know, and I'll email it to you. And then analyze and evaluate in writing the article using the guidelines that were presented in this video. And put your analysis in a Word document format and email it to me at happyj1939.com. So that's the beginning part of assignment 2. And I will email this to you, and also with the second part of assignment number 2. Well, thank you very much. This is the resources that were used in putting this video together. Again, thank you for your time and consideration. See you next time.